May I now request the Prime Minister and the Secretary General to take the podium. I now request the Prime Minister to deliver his remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to be here this morning alongside my friend, the United Nations Secretary General, António Guterres, having just concluded a wide-ranging and incredibly productive meeting during his historic visit to Fiji and, of course, to the Pacific region. I'd like to again thank the Secretary General for accepting my invitation to visit Fiji. Not only is this the Secretary General's first visit to our country personally, but this is the first time that we in Fiji have ever had the privilege of hosting a United Nations Secretary General. His visit could not have come at a more important time. When it comes to achieving peace and prosperity for all the world's people, Fiji is a nation that holds unwavering belief in the greatness of global cooperation and the might of multilateralism. We have shown the strength of that conviction through our deep and enduring commitment to our role within the United Nations. Given the scale of the present climate crisis, bold and decisive action from the country of nations is more urgent now than ever before. An impassioned resolve that is commonly held among myself, my fellow Pacific Island leaders, and I'm pleased to say the Secretary General. From his remarks yesterday, it's clear that we share a genuine fire in our bellies and that the voices of climate vulnerable people are resonating loud and clear at the very highest level of global leadership. Here in Suba, we have ensured that Pacific-born ideas are spread far beyond the Pacific. We have made it clear that we think bigger than our own backyard, and we have shown that the implications of decisive leadership expand wider than any country, any region, or any hemisphere for that matter. Fiji was proud to preside over the UN climate negotiations as president of COP23. During our presidency, we led global progress, driven by Pacific perspectives and experiences in furthering the implementation of the Paris Agreement. But despite that progress, our world presently remains on track for climate catastrophe. As the international community has yet to commit to action that would spare our planet from a devastating rise in global temperatures. Just 2 days ago at our Climate Action Pacific Partnership Conference here in Suba, Pacific Island nations took critical steps in our journeys towards decarbonization, actions we challenge the rest of the world to emulate. At that meeting, we declared a state of crisis in the Pacific and among vulnerable nations to the reality of climate change. In response, we call for an urgent increase in ambition within every nation's nationally determined contribution under the Paris Agreement, ahead of the Secretary General's Climate Summit in New York this September. Alongside my fellow Pacific Island leaders, I carried that call to action to the Secretary General, accompanied by a continued push for greater, more efficiently deployed climate financing to support the adaptation of our economies. And we look forward to working closely with the Secretary General, with governments and companies, civil society groups, NGOs, and ordinary citizens to decisively address the current climate crisis, the single greatest challenge of our time, the single greatest battle of our time. During our meeting, I also assured the Secretary General that we will continue to answer the call to serve the UN peacekeeping operations in conflict zones around the world, a commitment Fiji has long been proud to uphold. On behalf of the Fijian people, I want to thank you, Your Excellency, for coming to Fiji. Your presence in the Pacific is indicative of your commitment and that of the United Nations to all of its member nations, our voices, our perspectives, and by working together, our great potential. And I want to wish the Secretary General a wonderful time in Fiji, and I look forward to a welcome dinner in your honor this evening. Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Honorable Prime Minister, for your words, and especially thank you very much for the extremely warm hospitality I have been enjoying in your wonderful country. This visit has two dimensions, a Fijian dimension and a Pacific dimension. And in the Fijian dimension, it is a visit of gratitude in which I want to express how much we appreciate the extraordinary contribution of the Fijian people and the Fijian government to all the important areas of action of the United Nations and all important areas of international cooperation. Fiji has been a strong and committed partner in peacekeeping. Fijian soldiers, Fijian police officers have shown enormous determination, enormous courage, and some of them, unfortunately, have lost their lives protecting the lives of vulnerable people, of women, of children, in some of the most dangerous places of the world. And there is a depth of gratitude of the whole of the international community in relation to Fiji that I want to express here very clearly. Being side by side with a former peacekeeper. At the same time, Fijian leadership, both in relation to climate change, with the chair of the COP23, and in relation to the oceans and the need to protect our oceans that unfortunately are being undermined in so many dimensions through the Oceans Conference that took place in New York and the Fijian leadership, through the action of my special envoy, Peter Thompson, who's a Fijian, and through the commitment now to the next conference in Lisbon. Again, Fijian leadership has been an extremely important element in making sure that we are able to rally the international community to protect our oceans and to win the climate change battle. The Prime Minister was telling me in the meeting we just had that climate change corresponds to the battle of our lives from the point of view of Fiji and the Pacific. As Secretary General of the United Nations, I have many battles, but I have no doubt to say that as a grandfather, this is also the battle of my life. And it is absolutely essential that we mobilize the international community to make sure that in the end of the century, temperatures will not be above 1.5 degrees of what they were when this process started. It is absolutely essential for that to be possible that we reach in the world carbon neutrality in 2050. And this requires an enormous transformational effort in energy, in industry, in agriculture, in mobility, in the oceans. And also an enormous commitment in finance in order to support the developing countries that not only are showing, as it's the case of the Pacific, showing their leadership in mitigation, in reducing emissions, in adopting renewable energy, for instance, but that also are in the front line of the dramatic impacts of climate change and require huge investments in adaptation that the international community needs to support. And I'll be flying tomorrow to Tuvalu, that is probably one of the most, if not the most, impacted country in the world by climate change. And I want with this visit to do everything possible to make sure that the international community is mobilized for our summit in September and for the renewal in 2020 of the so-called national determined contributions, the commitments made by member states in relation to mitigation, to adaptation, and to finance. We need to recognize that for the moment, we are not winning this battle. For the moment, we are not on track, not even for the commitments made in Paris to be respected. And we absolutely need political will, a much stronger political will, to be able to reverse this trend and to be able to rescue our planet. And nowhere better than in the Pacific, we feel the moral obligation to do so, to rally the whole international community for this objective, and to thank the people and the governments of the Pacific for the extraordinary example they are providing to all of us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our media briefings this morning.
Inak.